What's up, guys? I'm Bind, and today I want to talk a little bit about the inspirational process because don't we all love to get inspired, right? So, in my 20 plus years of creating art and teaching bachelor students how to draw, I've encountered a lot of methods that you would call inspirational. Some of them, though, are not as good, and it's not as obvious why they're not so good. And others, I think, are more overlooked and much better. So without further ado, let's get into it. So first of all, guys, we kind of need to be on the same page, understanding what inspiration really means for us. So what it means for me is that by consuming anything in the world, looking at stuff or listening to stuff, there is a form of vision that presents itself to your mind's eye that you can then utilize to create your own original work. A lot of people, though, like to confuse inspiration with being in awe or just fanboying out, for lack of a better term. And that is something that I think is a huge misconception. So let's talk about what inspiration isn't. And it's pretty much exactly what I just said. Inspiration isn't just being in awe and then just trying to imitate the thing that you're a fan of. That is not inspiration. People call it that because it inspires them to imitate. And that is something completely different from creating your own original art. Also, let's be honest, guys, it is kind of hard to get away from that because it is common public opinion that, for example, if you go to the gallery and you see a famous artist and you look at the pieces in the exhibition all afternoon and you leave there in awe, what people will say is, oh, I got so inspired. This was such an inspiration. Now I want to create art myself. And for a layman, there is no issue with that because these people will not start to create art usually, right? That is not what they do. That is just the fantasy they're leaving the scene with in this instance. But for us, doesn't matter if you're a hobbyist or professional, aspiring artists, let's call ourselves that. It is very different because if we just get inspired, in quotation marks, by a famous artist in a gallery, what it really means, and I also talk about this with my students a lot, is that you just saw something that underwent the entire process of being inspired, adopting, transforming the inspiration to a finished product, and that's what you see in the exhibition. So the thing that you're admiring already went through a lengthy process and is already perfect, right? So all there's left to do for you is just to admire it. It is not a form of inspiration in the sense that you can take it and it's raw and you can transform it into your own thing. At least that is very hard because it has been tuned to perfection already. So what does that mean? What that means, I think, is that stuff that is perfect and stuff that is developed to a very high level is rarely a good source of inspiration if you want to create your own original work. A much better source of inspiration is, I think, random stuff in the real world. If you just go out and see things in the real world, or look at maybe some snapshots that you took on vacation, something that is not perfect, that is just a moment in time and has not underwent such a development phase already, that is something that for me is what I recommend, a much better source of inspiration, because everybody, in the instance that you look at stuff that is not already finished artwork, you are much freer, and intuitively you're much freer to interpret that and to change it around and to just whatever you might call it, deconstruct it and rearrange it in your own original ways than you are with something that is developed to perfection, right? So this is something I think is very crucial to understand, and I think it's not, yes, people are different and we all think and process stuff in slightly different ways, but we are all human. We all understand that there is at least something like an objective quality in craftsmanship, right? In art, in general, that is more debatable, because you can say that there is, you can measure the highest level of craftsmanship, but you cannot measure art itself in terms of quality. Just even though a lot of people will argue that they can, it's really, if you understand art on a deeper level, it's really not about quality. The craftsmanship is just one aspect, right? But it is a crucial aspect. And when you look at something that has been developed by a very skillful artist, then the result has usually, most of the time, a high level of craftsmanship as well. And that is exactly what we mean by good art in general, I think. So if you now have something as a form of inspiration that isn't perfect and that is not a finished product, I think that gives you the freedom now to take that and do with it however you please. And that is easier said than done, because a lot of people, and I see this every week in art school, they just come with these images that are by designers, by illustrators, and they say, oh, I want to do something like this. And then I say to them, yes, but what do you really want other than just saying like this, right? So the problem here is that already their ideas are taken hostage by this entity. And they don't have an original idea. They're just so in awe by the foreign idea of the other artists that they now seek to do exactly the same, which is really bad if you want to do original art, right? So you have to kind of set yourself free from that, in my opinion. And the way to do that is to realize that you're just fanboying at the moment, and that is not real inspiration. And then leave that behind, you put that aside, and then you think, maybe through sketching, and I think I should do another video about sketching, because that is really interesting, as a means to then decide what you really want. And what you really want, it can be as simple as starting like, I want to draw architecture because I love architecture. And that is a very overarching theme, right? But from that, you then can go more granular. Which epoch of architecture do you like? Which kinds of structures and building do you like? And then you find something and you formulate the idea of what you want. And it could be something as simple as, I want a cube-like structure house um, on some green hill, for example, because I saw something similar when I was on vacation in the south of France, and then now that image stuck with me, and I would say that is something that is your original idea because that came from your life experience. It didn't come from seeing the perfect house on the hill image from a gallery by a famous artist, but it just developed. They developed a need to express yourself from your experience, and that is what I consider to be true ideas and true inspiration. And now you can seek methods on how to deliver that. And then you might look at some images online or wherever in some books, and then try to resolve this puzzle for yourself, and the puzzle being cube-like house on a green hill, right? And it can get more granular from there. Now, guys, don't get me wrong here. I'm not saying that any so-called motivation, let's call it that you get from looking at your famous artists or art is like a fake inspiration, and you should not pursue that in any way, because that's not really the issue here. The issue is that there is a danger that you're just compelled to imitate rather than to do your own stuff. So I would say just be aware of that, and just know that there is you can imagine it pretty much like this. There is fan art that just imitates, and then there is fan art that really transforms the subject, and the artist expresses the same content in their own style or with a new twist or something like that. So that then there is a transformative process, and then I would say there is an original idea there, and the artist get inspired by something that is just not just the original content. So if it helps you, I think you can think about it like that. So you might say, well, why aren't people just do that then? And pretty much, why are we so compelled to imitate? And I think the answer to that is because it's part of the human condition. We are in awe, we recognize greatness, and we want to be great ourselves. And it is much easier to imitate something on a high level than it is to do something original on the same high level. And everybody who tried that knows this intuitively. Because once you try to resolve the puzzle that is designing an illustration, you will realize that there's a lot of answers, a lot of decisions to make that if you just imitate, they're already made for you. And it makes the process so much easier, which is why I have to be honest here for a second. I have very little respect for people who just do pencil portraits of famous people and then get 1 million followers through that. For me, that is not art. That's just an exercise, something that, yeah, you should do that to get better and then throw it away and then do something original. But yeah, I think that will go a little bit too far. Also, it's not like I don't want to sound like I'm jealous of these people's success. That's not what this is about. This is just, we're talking here much more hardcore original artist talk, because that is what I am about. I'm not about imitating in any way, shape or form. As a matter of fact, little anecdote here from myself is I was always afraid of imitating. Even as a teenager, I realized when I was like 14, 15, 16 years old that, oh shit, I need to stop just imitating these comics that I liked, right? Which was something like Masamune Shiro's Appleseed, something like that. I would do the illustrations just like him, just like the master. And then at one point I was like really having a talk with myself. I think really I was not even 18 years old, and I swore to myself, no more imitation. That's it. I want to do real original stuff, because even back then I realized there is a little bit of a hypocrisy trying to be an original artist, but all you do is just imitating other artists. That is not something that sits well with me, but that is also in my nature, I think, because as a younger kid, you just feel this, that you want to express yourself rather than imitate. So now you might say, that's great and all, but where do I get my inspiration from now? And I would say, and that is also what I tell my students, is that in general, anything that hasn't underwent a process of another artist is a genuine raw form of inspiration. That could be photographs. I love photographs. There is a lot of platforms with stock photography. There is the image search online, of course. There are books with photographs. I think that's a very good idea, because a photograph has another quality to it, and that is that it has not already been interpreted with an artist's style. So there is no stylistic tendency in the photograph other than the photographic, of course, expression and tendency. But for us painters, drawers, that is not so much of an issue, because it feels very free to look at something like this, and it's very easy to transform it and to just put away with stuff. And then once you do work with those references, automatically you will put your own style on it, because there is no other style that is that you could possibly imitate. So that's something to be considered. Also, what I would say, and that is something that is obvious for pros, but not very obvious for pretty much everybody else. And that is, do not think for a second that you will find all the inspiration online. There is a ton of images that are not online. It is a very false thought, very false prejudice of people to think that, oh yeah, everything is online. I'll just Google it and I'll find pretty much everything there is. No, not gonna find everything online. You're not even going to find close to everything online. And that is because everything is not online. There is tons of archives of old books. And I'm not talking old like ancient. I'm talking old like 80 years old, or 60 years old, or 50 years old. That you will not find any image within these books or within these bodies of work online for some reason, because maybe it's a dedicated archive that has rights issues, all of that stuff. So yeah, there's tons of that, tons of material that you will never find online. So just be aware of that. For myself, for example, I'm glancing over to a book. Give me a second here. So here's an example, right? This book, what is it called? Architecture Without Architects by Bernard Rudolfsky. I bought this book 20 years ago in a small alternative library in New York City. And there is tons of imagery. There is very professional black and white photography. and not a single one of them you will find online. I promise you that. So there is something to be said for Googling online, because also there is a second problem, and that is that the algorithm of those search engines, it really pushes a few pictures only, and then the rest gets left behind on page 235, right? So there's also that issue that whoever Googles the same terms, they will always get shown the exact same images. So it's really not very unique. It is, however, still all right to use image searches for reference, right? If you just want to see how, I don't know, a branded car or a screwdriver or a coffee machine, what that looks like, that it's perfect to utilize the image search. But if you want to see some inspirational photography, imagery that not everybody can see, the browser image search is not the answer. So just be aware of that. So anyways, guys, let me know what you think about the inspirational process. Let me know about your methods, your takes. You think I covered this in a satisfying manner, or have I forgotten something? Let me know down below, and talk to you next time. Also, guys, no, not anyone can learn to draw like Kim Jong-il. That is just an insane thing to say. So anyways, see you later.